Hi, welcome to Mom to Mom. My name is Rayanne, and I'm part of the Mom to Mom ministry team here at ABC. Whether this is your first time tuning in or you've come to Mom before, we're glad you're here. We do meet in person the first Thursday of every month from September to May, both in the mornings and the evenings. We'd love to have you join us. We hope you enjoy the teaching you're about to hear. Thanks for watching.
I'm so excited to talk about this month. It's gonna be great. There's lots of good things that we're gonna talk about. But to kick us off, Tiffany is gonna share with us our peer perspective for this morning. So if you don't know Tiffany, please get to know her because she's pretty awesome. Yep, she's got a big fan club, so it's not real hard to think that she's awesome. But she is gonna share with us some of the things that she's been learning and just a little bit about herself and her family. So take it away, Tiffany.
Is this on? Yeah, sounds like it, right? Great. I like when the mic's not overpowering and I have to question whether it's on. Okay, this is not my jam, so I'm just letting you know it's not my jam to be up here and it's not my jam to talk about myself. So a double whammy for me today. Yay. And a perfect example of that, so I shared my draft with what I wanted to talk about today with Carrie, and her feedback was like, cool, but we know nothing about you. So to give you a little, not a little, I'm gonna literally share with you what I originally shared about myself is simply this. For those of you that don't know me, my name's Tiffany Williams. I'm married to Luke Williams, and we have two girls, Nova, who's a little over 3.5, and Raven, who is 1.5. And now you know everything about me, right? That's it. That was it. That was literally all I had to share. So I'm going to expand a little bit. And by a little bit, I'm going to try and do a lot here. So I am not from here. I was born and raised in Michigan. So if you think it's cold out there, guess again. It's not. My parents divorced when I was 2, so I don't really know my parents together. The great thing about my parents, though, is everybody always got along. So totally different dynamic when it came with that. They both remarried when I was 8, and on Sunday, I always went to church with my mom and stepdad. And the type of church I'm talking about is like there's organ pipes everywhere, there's stained glass windows, the choir is in robes, we're singing hymns. Not really my cup of tea. So I very quickly got bored with church and stopped going basically when I could. So I stopped going when I went to Michigan State University, so not the college that just won the national championship, but the other college. But my dad went to Michigan, so I've gone to more Michigan football games than Michigan State, so it was very exciting to see them win and for my dad to be very happy about that. Then I got my graduate degree from Syracuse, so then moved to New York for a little bit. After that, turn the page. I basically wanted to do post-production sound production for movies. So after I graduated from Syracuse with a master's, I went to LA and worked at a post-production sound studio for movies. And as you can tell, a lot of famous people came in and out of there, and it quickly kind of just became a place where you just had to be cool around them. You know, you couldn't be giddy, and it was just normal to see these people around, normal enough to when Robert De Niro was getting snacks, I literally thought it was my dad from behind. I think I actually even was like, Dad? I'm like, oh, nope, not my dad. And in that time, I really hated the industry as well, as I'm sure you can tell, being a female in a very male-dominant world, I felt that. And so during that time, I fell in love with fitness and decided to switch gears that way by doing some personal training and Pilates. Through basically the lady who owned the Pilates studio, I ended up working for Meghan Markle for a little bit, actually, and then quickly lost my job as soon as she started dating Harry. Yeah, that was a big okay, Meghan, you're not connected to anybody anymore. Then moved and lived in Europe for a bit, and then actually ended up moving back home for a few years. And during that time is when I met my husband. And one thing that really drew me to him was that I loved his relationship with God and that his family really loved God as well. And I didn't really know I was looking for that in my life until listening to him, hearing about his relationship, and just really like I joke, I'm like, Luke, I didn't actually fall in love with you. I fell in love with you loving God. But no, super love him. And so then I'm gonna not talk about this part, but I lived in Michigan, he lived here. It's just a whole nother story. I moved here when we got married. We'll just say that. And then fast forward to right now. I'm here in front of all of you. So I moved here in 2018. I think I forgot to say that. So now we're gonna jump more towards the technology, now that you guys know more about me. So to put into context, I will share, just so that you know how I grew up with technology, I am turning 40 in May, so that kind of gives you a perspective of how I grew up. So I grew up knowing that life without technology, and then also knowing the life where your parents would yell at you to get off the computer because you were clogging the phone line. And when I was in college, that's when Facebook really started. And it was when you could only have a college email to get on Facebook. So I remember very much the very beginnings of Facebook, and having Tom as your one and only friend initially. Good old Tom and his little headshot. So I then, jumping back here a little bit. So with the Pilates studio, that's kind of when I was going there, was when social media was really starting to launch. You couldn't go to school for it. Nobody knew what this was about. But I convinced that owner to let me do her social media, and in this instance, Instagram and Facebook. She convinced me to do that. I did that for a very long time, and basically was the jump start to me then starting my own business of social media management, which I still do to this day. So, over a decade later. And it's just been a very ever-changing thing with how I manage that. In the very beginning, if you're an entrepreneur trying to get clients, you're the yes man. You say yes to everything. Text me at 3 a.m., call me at 3 a.m., don't care. Well, that quickly does not work very well. As we all know, when our phone is constantly talking to us, things just never really turn out very well. So just to kind of give you the background of what I do, how much technology is a part of my life, I do want to switch gears though and share about how we do technology with our kids. So fast forward to April 2020, literally a month into COVID, we're all stuck at home. We have our first child, where I'm sure people use technology more than they ever did possibly before. That TV was on, that iPad was on, the whatever was on to make us not feel so bad about being stuck inside. But at that time, my husband and I really wanted to figure out what technology meant for our family and how we were gonna allow or not allow our children to be involved with it. So through talking with him and praying and asking what others did, we decided that we were not going to allow any technology to be present in Nova's life until after she was 18 months old. There's a lot of studies that maybe you guys have, looked at and listened and heard about that it can be pretty negative to the developing brain for a child under 18 months. So we decided that was going to be our goal. So this literally meant the TV was never on if the child was awake. And if you know my husband loves movies. He can tell you who directed it, who was in it, who did the scoring, literally just tell him oh yeah, there's this movie where this lady, she's walking down the street and she sees a bus. And he's like, yep, that movie. And you're like, yep, you're right. So that was a huge change for even me working in, the movie industry and him loving movies. Like that was a big, big sacrifice to have the TV never on in our home. So at this point, my child just thinks there's a big black thing on the wall and it's just big and black. Like it doesn't do anything. And a moment that really solidified our decision to do this was when I took a solo trip with Nova. I think she was close to the 18-month mark on an airplane to Kansas to go to my grandmother's funeral. And no technology. So literally, we read that safety card so many times. And what I mean by read, we're pointing at, there's the baby. Oh, there, they have a little raft. Isn't that fun? And it really made me feel good when multiple people at the end of the flights we took, there and back, literally people said to me, they just thought it was so great that we just sat there and interacted. My kid does not sleep on the go, so a nap didn't happen. And so I just felt like that was just one of those moments where you're like, okay, you're on the right path. Now, 18 months came and went, and at that time, set the alarm on your watch, 18 months, here we are. And we just still felt like we didn't need to introduce anything, things were good. And so we just kept it going. And to give you a little perspective, Nova never saw anything at home until she was 2.5. So that was 2 Christmases ago. We let her watch something. And when we did decide to finally let her watch something, we wanted to be very, I can't think of the word right now, but we wanted it to make sure that a show, whatever you want to call it, wasn't available all the time. So that meant we never had the phone be something that she could watch on. It was the TV at home, and then sometimes an iPad that that's tucked into the abyss of the darkness that she has no idea where it is. So we never wanted to be we're out and about, we have our phone, can I watch a show kind of thing. We wanted to be very strict of this is only where you can watch this. Then when Nova stopped taking naps, we started to allow some more shows to come into our world. But it was still very intentional. If she was watching a show, we were sitting down with her while she was watching the show. We would talk about whatever we were watching, interact with her with it, ask her what she thinks about what just happened, or just make comments so that she knew we were very much engaged and it wasn't a time for us just to sit next to her and be on our phones or doing something else. And another thing I want to point out is that my kids were at school during this. So it's not like they're home 7 days a week and we're doing this plan. This plan really only came into play in the evenings and on the weekends. And fast forward to June, then Raven was born. Again, wanting to take the same approach with her. To this day, she still has not seen or knows what that big black thing does. She does not know anything about that. But slowly, or I should say quickly, Nova started to learn because the TV couldn't be on if Raven was awake. But we would allow it if Raven was taking a nap. Well, that quickly turned into Nova starting to ask prematurely, is it nap time? Is Raven going to take a nap? When is nap time? And we quickly were like, okay, we don't like what's happening here. So then we started removing Nova from the home when Raven was taking a nap. So Luke and I would take turns, he would have Saturday, I would have Sunday, whatever, and we would take her to the store, take her on an adventure, or something of that nature to just make her not think it's assumed she gets X when Y happens. Are we running out of time? Yeah. Okay. Almost there. This is a good practice for later. Okay. Yeah, I think that's fine. I just wanted to basically wrap it up. See, you made me talk about myself too much. I ran out of time.
And I'm so glad you did.
I do just wanted to say that, like, sharing my perspective, I don't want anybody to feel bad. Like, you guys are rock stars. You guys are awesome moms. You're doing the right thing. You know it's good for your family. But I think it is important to know that we can, make changes. Nothing is set in stone. We can always change the dynamics of our home. But I will say something that was a little bit awakening over this Christmas break is that I was at home with the girls. Luke was at the store. He needed to know about something he was picking up. I went to pick up my phone to respond to him, and my 1.5-year-old Raven immediately coming at me went, no, like pushing the phone out of my hand. So just to say that our children are watching us all the time. It's important to try when we are in front of them to keep our attention to them, as it's very impactful. And I'm happy to share more if you want to talk to me. And it's always a work in progress.
Thanks so much, Tiffany. That was great. It's fine.
Can I turn it off?
You don't have to turn it off. You can put it right there. Do you want your notes? Yes. Wasn't that super helpful? Thank you so much. It's really great. Okay, so that's a perfect little intro to our topic this morning. Oops, I'm not actually going to read all these papers, so don't worry. I just need one copy. Okay. I know that we've all kind of thought about this before, and so one of the things we're going to do this morning, as Missy talked about when she introed this, is that we will be sharing collaborative ideas too, because I think it's really helpful to learn from one another, and then sometimes, all of my good ideas came from someone else. And so if you're like me and you want to pool ideas, that's what we want to facilitate here this morning. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some ideas to kind of get us off, starting on the same page, if you will. Something that has been encouraging to me as I have looked into just the topic of technology, and especially as a mom and technology in our family, is that technology has been around for a really, really long time. And really, ever since the wheel, technology has been changing culture, changing society. I recently heard the comparison of AI and the changes that AI could bring, looking similarly disruptive to farming when the tractor was introduced. And so farmers weathered that storm. Even think about the printing press and how that changed dynamics. Can you imagine if our problem was wondering if our kids spent too much time inside reading as opposed to playing outside? Doesn't that just sound magical if that was our issue? But I could imagine that at the time, that was maybe something some moms thought about was, goodness, is my kid reading too much instead of playing outside? So it just helps me recognize that regardless of the difficulty we're facing, people who are empowered with the Holy Spirit have had to face these similar challenges before. And we can, with the power of the Holy Spirit, walk through these challenges and face these questions knowing that we are empowered to find solutions that are going to work for our family and for our household. So I'm curious to see from you guys how many of you would say that, this is not a trick question, I'm honestly curious, how many of you would raise your hand to say that they are confident in their kind of situation at home right now regarding technology, that they don't feel like they need to make big changes in their life or the lives of their kids, the guidelines you have set up for your kids? Oh, good. I was really hoping that some of you would raise your hands, because I want to give us hope that if you're not in that situation, that people can be in that situation. You don't always have to be super overwhelmed with technology. It doesn't have to be the scary kind of monster in the closet. We can have a plan that grows and changes over time as our families get older, as our kids get older, and we might even need to change our plan for us. And we don't have to be in that constant state of overwhelm. So that's what I hope happens at the end of maybe this talk, but maybe just after you've thought about these things more after today, that you would feel more confident that you are on the right track in terms of technology. So in preparation for this talk, I read this book Andy Crouch wrote called The Tech-Wise Family. My husband had read it before, so we had talked about some of the concepts, but I hadn't actually read it before. And so I read through it, and I was really looking for some tangible, really practical advice on technology. Like, put it in a spreadsheet for me, and I will just copy and paste. But the way he approaches it is really so much better. He does give a lot of practical advice, but he frames his technology in a really helpful way, and I really recommend this book. I feel like I should just set it up there during the whole talk. It's by Andy Crouch. It's really helpful. I'll have a slide at the end with all my recommendations on there for you too, but this is like a must read. Yeah, see, there you go. That's like a little preview of what I'm going to talk about, so take it away now, because he does a great job in this book, and I'm going to borrow some of his terminology. He talks about how technology has a proper place in our lives, and so we're going to look at putting technology in its proper place. I just really liked the phraseology of that. As us, we're going to look at that as us for individuals and as moms, and then we're going to talk about technology having a proper place in our home and with our kids. So how many of you have heard about the still face experiment? A few of you? Okay, it was done in the 1970s, so it's not super recent, but I still think we can learn something from it. So Matt's going to play the clip up here. Okay. So, I could have shown some other things that would have cut us a little deeper. I know that study is not as groundbreaking as it was like today as it was in the 70s. We know how much infant interaction is important, but I still had that sinking feeling when I watched it and thought about how having a screen in front of me impacts my kids. Not just my infants, right? I don't have infants anymore, but even as my kids have gotten older, right? I don't want to put guilt and shame in this conversation, but I do want us to really understand that it's really important to be present to our kids. And it's not a light calling, it's not easy, but it's really important for us to understand that our actions affect our kids. And so as much as I don't want to put guilt and shame in this conversation, I want us to remember our kids notice these things. They are very aware of when we are distracted and not paying attention to them. And of course, maybe we don't need to be so focused on them all the time, at every moment. That's not necessarily our calling either, but we just need to be aware of those dynamics, right? I've been following the work of Jenny Wise Black. She's a licensed marriage and family therapist who specializes in how media impacts our mental health. She works with both kids, teenagers, and also their parents. And she talks about how when she's dealing with the older kids, elementary age, these kids express to her repeatedly how much they just want their parents to get off of their phones, to see them, to interact with them, and to know them. We have to take drastic measures sometimes to pull away from our phones. I joked one time up here about my phone being like the ring in Lord of the Rings, where it's like you don't even know that you just like want it. You know, you don't need it. You just find yourself grabbing it for no reason at all. And I was joking about it, but by golly, does that not ring true? I feel that way sometimes when I don't have my phone on me. I feel, and I don't know if you have had this experience, where I could have sworn my phone vibrated in my pocket, or my phone or my watch vibrated and I needed to look at it. It's like my mind is tricking me to constantly be paying attention to this device, even if there's no notification sound at all. It's a desire that is instinctive in us to get that little shot of adrenaline or affirmation. It's really, really insidious. And so in your mind's eye, picture what your kids see, maybe when they get home from school or when you pick them up from something, or if you're homeschooling, when they're in between tasks and they look up and they see what you are doing. You might be doing something as innocuous as checking the weather or looking at your calendar, but our kids don't differentiate. We talked about that. All they see is us on our screens with a still face, right? So this is what I want you guys to do. Pull out your devices right now, and I want you to open your settings app and go to the digital well-being section. It's under settings. I have an Android, guys, so I had to consult some of you. I don't want to hear any comments about having an Android. I have lots to say. I've gotten lots of flack, and I have lots to say about that, so don't even get me started. I actually had to delete something out of my talk. Okay, but I'm going there, so I'm stopping. Pull open your settings app, and there's a section that says digital well-being. Someone can... Oh, or screen time. Sorry, on the Apple phone, it says screen time. If you have a fruit, go to screen time. So check it out. If you need to scroll back to yesterday's stats on your screen time assessment, your digital assessment, you can do that. Because maybe today hasn't gone on long enough, or maybe today you're already horrified. So, right, you're like, I'm just not gonna look at that. Okay, so only you can know if there are stats on there that need to change, right? I can't tell you how many times you should have picked up your phone or should have looked at your phone. So I want you now, we're gonna spend just 5 minutes of talking time at our tables. Look at that and share with your girls real quickly, like rapid fire, we got 5 minutes. Share what apps are taking up the most of your time, and what do you need to do about that? I want you to ask, is it a matter of getting rid of an app, or is it just putting some parameters in place for you when you do your calendaring? Maybe that's at a different time than when your kids are around, those kinds of things. So go ahead and discuss that in your table. What apps are taking the most time, and what do you need to do about that? Okay, I know that was really short, but I wanted to hear from someone from each of the tables. One quick takeaway that you just had in your discussion about that. If you could just share one thing from each table so that we can all glean wisdom from each other. How about the table in the back? So what's one thing that you want to take away from just that little discussion? Yeah, you don't like them. You don't like those numbers. It's good to be confronted with reality sometimes. Maybe it's just a matter of checking in on yourself every week or so of how you did with your screens this week. What about this table right here?
I think just the takeaway would be, we don't need to be like Little House on the Prairie situation where we're like bad, like this is a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
Just, hey, literally just what you just said. Just a check-in and, oh my gosh, I did not know I was 4 hours and 8 minutes since on Instagram alone type deal. So just like a check-in.
Yeah, check in.
But
Yeah,
no
absolutely.
shame and no, like, because people get paid for being on their phone, so.
Yeah.
No shame though.
No shame. Yep. What about you guys? One takeaway.
Probably just how hard it is in this culture and society. Like even school kids, they have to go online to find their homework or to check in. And so
Yeah.
trying to find the balance of putting parameters on that, both for ourselves and our kids, including, and it's particularly a problem if you're self-employed and that's your livelihood.
Yeah.
And just trying to work through all of that.
Yeah, find the parameters, the boundaries. Yeah. Yeah, good job. That's okay. What about you guys?
Yeah, we're struggling with the takeaway, but we had really good conversation.
Okay, good.
I think just one thing that stuck out was like this is not necessarily like a new problem with like phones, but like growing up, like walking out in the morning, like I remember my dad sitting over his coffee and like a newspaper, and Lauren remembers her dad with like his Bible, and so like what do we want our kids to like see us like reading or seeing us doing, and so.
Yeah, what do you want your kids to remember you when they walk out in the morning and see you doing? Yeah, that's great food for thought. Yeah. What about you guys, Lisa?
Well, I was just commenting as a grandparent how I am even recording my grandkids, right?
Oh, yeah.
So they're always seeing this screen between me and them.
Yeah.
And then they want to look at what I've just taken. And so what are we saying to them? Like look at yourself all the time. What's that doing to your brains?
Yeah. It's food for thought for sure. Yeah. Okay, what about you guys?
We talked about what our own as parents screen time looks like,
Mm-hmm.
the importance of getting that in check as we're holding our kids accountable to a plan. And so another thought was, if we're on our phones, we have to be on our phones, we go to another room. Like we have a place, whether it's the bathroom or the bedroom, where we engage on the text or whatnot, but really not have it with us and make that just a
Yeah. Keep the phone away. Be in another room. Yeah, what about you guys?
We talked about how, a lot of different things, but one of the things that's difficult is that so much of like just even household management or communication back and forth from school, like everything comes to your phone. And so it's stuff we need to do, like messages from school or like you were saying weather or grocery apps, like clipping the coupons, like everything's on our phone, but the kids don't know, like I'm trying to pay the bill, but it just looks like same to them.
Yeah. maybe even articulating that.
Take care of that stuff. So how do you do that?
Yeah. Yeah, maybe even articulating that to your kids, like, oh, I have to pay this bill right now. Or if you can, what I've been trying to do is actually go to my laptop instead of my phone, because the laptop doesn't have the same allure as my phone does. And so sometimes that's helpful when and my kids don't have the association as much. I'm not walking around with my laptop in front of them, you know. A couple of things that I do that I wanted to share is I parent my phone, and I learned this from John Mark Comer, from his teachings and writings. I put my phone to bed at night around 8 or 8:30, and it doesn't wake up until 7 usually. I'm pretty strict about that. I've even been putting it to bed earlier because it needs more rest. So, and I've recently, because I've been thinking about this so much in the last month, I recently have found myself leaving the house and forgetting that I didn't even unplug my phone in the morning. So it's a great feeling, and I think it's really, really important for us to remember that we are in charge of our phones. It is not in charge of us. It does not control us. And so we need to treat it that way. We need to have rhythms of going without it. Even if you are with your family and you're at a friend's house for dinner, leaving your phone in the car. I know a lot of times as moms, we feel like we need our phone because what if something happens to our kids? So that's a real kind of thing that we think about. We want to be available for the school if they need to call. But if there are times where we have our kids with us and we can put our phone aside, it's a really great opportunity to just be without it. You don't need it when you're at a friend's house for dinner. I recently took email and web browsing off of my phone because I found that even after removing social media, I would still read the news or something just silly online when my kids were around. And so now I have to go to my laptop if I want to check my email or something like that, even just little things. I have to go to my laptop. And again, it doesn't have that same allure for me. There also has been some studies done about productivity, and when we are constantly checking our emails throughout the day, how that actually is really bad for us and our brains and our time management skills. Cal Newport talks about this in his book called Deep Work. It's actually better and more productive to just go to your email, sort through it one time a day, especially if it's work email, and then respond to the things you need to respond to in just a set amount of time. That's actually way more time efficient. And so it's just one thing that I'm trying out. We'll see how long I have it off of my phone. I just figured I'd go without it for a little while and see what happens. So I'm also trying, unless it's in a working meeting, when you're in a work meeting and you need your devices to put on your calendar or to take notes on or whatever, unless I'm in that kind of meeting, I try not to have my phone out in a meeting. There have been, again, lots of studies done about teens when they take a test, whether or not their phone is out or accessible or completely put away, and how that has affected their ability to focus and their performance on their tests. And turns out if their phones are completely removed, they do way better on their tests. So even just having meetings one-on-one, if I'm just meeting up with a friend, having my phone completely removed is something I'm trying to do. I don't need that. I have a watch. I'm kind of conflicted about that. But if the school really needs me, they can call me and it'll buzz my watch. And so I know that I can answer that phone call if they call. So technology has a proper place in our lives, but I'm compelled that it is best lived out in a really limited way. In the TechWise family, Andy Crouch says, you don't have to become Amish, but you probably have to become closer to Amish than you think. So sort of a good news, bad news situation there. He calls it being almost Amish. So I just really want to encourage you. It feels hard, but you might need to be more Amish than you think. So make a mental note or maybe an actual note. I know, as you were sharing, I'm like, Amish. Make a mental note of something you might need to do. There's actually notes on the table, so you can write it down of one thing that you might need to do to change your own technology habits, whether it's getting rid of something or whether it's putting parameters in place that are going to be really helpful for you. Content is also really important, right? It doesn't just matter time, it matters what we are looking at. So one thing I've been thinking about with regards to content is Psalm 1. And Psalm 1 says, "Blessed is the one who walks not in the counsel of the wicked, nor stands in the way of sinners, nor sits in the seat of scoffers. But her delight is in the law of the Lord, and on his law she meditates day and night." Walks not, stands, nor sits in the way of sinners and scoffers. And so what we think about really matters. That's ancient wisdom that's telling us what we dwell in, what we meditate on matters, and it actually could be a matter of life or death. If there is a sin issue in your life involving devices, Jesus is really clear that with sin we have to take drastic action. And he says in Matthew 5, if your right hand causes you to stumble, cut it off and throw it away. And while I think that he was using a figure of speech, I don't think he actually meant someone to cut off their hand. But I do think he would advocate for drastic action. So when it comes to our devices, I think that we should be carefully considering what actions we need to do to get away from sin. If you think you need to switch to a dumb phone, take the internet off of your phone, then you absolutely should do that. And maybe it's just for a season, but maybe it's for good, and make sure that you respond appropriately. And if you don't think there's major changes, major issues, but there are changes that could help, then you should lean into that as well. This whole topic has, for me, brought up the very important but very difficult topic of pornography. It's become really clear to me how intense this is an issue for many, many men and also for women. In a room this size, I think that many of us either know or we're afraid to know if our husbands look at porn or not. So if you're in a situation where you know your husband uses porn or you struggle personally in this area, I have resources for you. So please come and talk to me about it. It can be an addiction, and it really needs to be addressed as an addiction. It's not just poor management of your device. It's really tricky when it involves our husband's sin, and there's a lot of shame associated with that, but you do want to take steps in that direction. You can come talk to me. There's also a website that I want to recommend called fightforloveministries.org, and it's a really great resource. That'll be up on my resource slide at the end, too. So now that you can hear a pin drop, let's move on to how we navigate technology with our kiddos. So the first question I want you to ask yourself in this topic is, what kind of household do I want to be? What kind of household do I want to have? What kind of household do I want to be? That is really the question that we should always come back to. It's the big picture question. If we have an idea of what kind of household we want, like we want good relationships with our kids, with lots of verbal communication, but we find ourselves personally on our devices at home during family dinner time, then we know that the ideal is not meeting the reality and that we need to make some changes. So I was listening to your favorite and mine, Sissy Goff and David Thomas's podcast. They were interviewing some technology experts from Bark. So I'll talk about Bark a little bit later too. But one of the experts they were interviewing, Matt McKee, he reframed this question for me of how much screen time should my kid have to thinking about the purpose of the child being on the device to begin with. And I thought that was just really helpful in how I've been thinking about screen time. Instead of asking how much, we should be asking what's the purpose. So that being said, like Tiffany talked about in her perspective, the American Academy of Pediatrics does advise to avoid screen time under 18 months, from 18 to 24 months to avoid solo media use, and from ages 2 to 5, limit to 1 hour a day. But I don't want us to get hung up so much about the time and how much screen time. I just really appreciated how that person put it into perspective about the purpose, especially when it comes to a little bit older kids. We have elementary school age kids. And as we think about screen time, think about the purpose of why they're on their device. But since many of us have little kiddos, and since screen time is a really big issue, we are going to spend some time thinking about it around our tables. So we'll have another brief discussion. Again, it's only for 5 minutes, so short, quick ideas. But I'd like you to discuss how you put guidelines in place when it comes to limiting your child's actual screen time. So we'll discuss content next, but right now it's just time. You might have a toddler, you might have a teenager. But what have been the most helpful guidelines in limiting screen time? For example, do you have incentives in your home where chores are done first? Do you have strategies that help promote the balance between outdoor activities and social activities and screen time? Do you have structures or rhythms your kids are aware of that help them to know what they can expect as far as screen time or movie time goes? So what have been the most helpful guidelines in limiting screen time? Go. What are some of your top takeaways, some guidelines for limiting screen time for your kids? I'm going to start in the back. Tiffany's table. Top takeaway. Yeah, so putting guidelines in a place where you know that the screen time isn't going to go longer than you want it to go.
And that wins for my kid who doesn't understand time. And for me, I feel like it's just a win-win for both of us to be successful in that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so putting in those guidelines and things that will check you so you're not the one that in the moment has to decide, okay, we should be done with screen time now. I guess that means I have to do my job as a mom. I have to be intentional with my kids. It's easy. It's really easy to let screen time just go for a long time. What about you guys?
Good question. We talked about a lot of different stuff. Yeah, we talked to one of our members, their TV remote broke, and so they can only turn on their TV with their apps on their phone.
Okay.
Kids can't turn on by themselves.
Okay, yeah, so kids not turning on the TV by themselves, you have to turn it on with,
Yodo box and Tony's and listening to books instead.
yeah, listening to audiobooks. Absolutely. Good ideas. What about you guys?
I'm like Kelly shared because so my husband and I switched to flip phones.
Okay, yeah.
And it's the best ever.
Switching to flip phones. We have a flip phone advocate, you guys.
Separating your computer from people being able to reach you makes both way less addictive.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Now people can reach you, but you don't need to be near the internet.
Yeah,
You
absolutely.
can designate internet time for yourself.
Yeah.
The kids aren't in the room, and you can get your work done.
Yeah.
Which works.
Yeah.
And then we also got a 90s box TV and a bunch of VHS tapes.
It's fantastic. So great. Oh my gosh, Kelly, you should have given this talk. That's fantastic. Okay, switch to a flip phone, you guys. I know. Speaking of flip phones, Heidi, what about your table?
So do chores first to earn
Chores first.
or studies.
Yeah.
But it's yeah. You got the internet
Turning off the internet.
and the internet or two separate internet.
Yeah. Yeah, I have a friend who turns off, changes the password every day, and so the password won't come. Or their kids have to be completely done. She has older kids who have their own devices, but yeah, that's a great idea. Just turn off the internet. It's great. What about you guys?
We said a lot of different things, but probably at least 3 people said that having boundaries and they're hard to set up, but once you do, the kids finally will accept them, and then they just don't even ask.
Yeah.
And the difference between what it was like before having really clear boundaries, and it's you have to fight to maintain that boundary, but then they do just stop asking.
Yeah, so when you have a boundary that's set up, sometimes it's hard to initially start enforcing it and get in that rhythm. But once it's enforced and the kids understand the rhythm, it's way easier. Their expectations have been set. Your expectations are set. It makes everything go smoothly. Yeah. What about you guys?
We were talking about how it's necessary for them to be on it and it's in their faces all the time.
Mm-hmm.
About how our kids are doing their math homework on their
Yep.
phones on the way to practice. It's not something that can't be able to get away from.
Yeah.
But that we have control and are aware of what they're on and who they're communicating with and stuff. That it's just gonna have to be an open conversation. It's gonna have to be something that is all the time. That there's fluidity and that we have. We would say things like bark or chew me or other parental control.
Parental controls, yeah. Yeah.
Then there's a balance between using technology for when you need it and for when it's almost a reward. We were saying that if our kids are super active and they're doing everything that they need to be doing and the stuff that has been completed is done, then sometimes it's nice to be able to veg out and
Yeah.
if they know when they get to do that and for how long and it's under this umbrella of you've done what you need to do, so go ahead and
Yeah.
that's fine. And we
Yeah, yep. Just having those expectations set in place makes that go so much easier, and it's not a fight all the time. But they know once I finish all my work, then I get to have some time. Yeah. Okay, what about you guys?
Talking about how it's easy when you go out and about and you go to a restaurant or wherever, it's easy to bring out the phone for kids to watch or something.
Mm-hmm.
And so just talking about some practical, tangible ways of just like bringing a new coloring book with, some sparkly pens, and just as a special thing for when you're out and about. So just keeping it under lock, essentially, when you're out and about, and not just like, it's easy to say, oh yeah, we have to wait in line, we're waiting for our dinner, whatever. So,
Yeah, that's a great idea. Having something special for them to do when you're waiting at a restaurant or whatever, like a coloring book, new coloring pens. My kids even get excited about crayons, and well, not the older ones, but maybe my 9-year-olds would get excited about crayons. But yeah, that's a great idea.
Those of us who are mentor moms in the room did survive.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, yeah. Back in the dark ages, we did wait in doctor's offices without technology. It's true. Okay, next up, we want to talk about not just the screen time that we have with our kids, but also the content that they have. And like anything, this does get older, as it does get harder as they get older. How do you monitor content that your child takes in? For the younger ones, do you allow unrestricted access to apps like Disney Plus, where they can watch whatever movie they want? Do you let them download any kind of app? What guidelines do you use to help keep your kids accountable to the content that they are taking in? So go ahead and discuss that around your tables. I'll give you another 5 minutes. Okay, you guys, let's circle around again. How do you monitor the content that your kids take in? Okay, guys. Okay, nobody's paying attention to me. It's great. It's really great that you guys are having good discussion. We'll start with the table in the back. How do you guys monitor content that your kids take in? Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Oh, sneaky. Yeah. Yeah, so using on Android, it's called Family Link. Is it called something? Okay. Family Share. Yeah, so there are parameters when your child has their own device to monitor content that you have to approve the app. You can look at the report of their screen time. You see what apps. I just did that last night and put a limit on an app that my daughter had been using an hour a day. Just, it was a game. Oh. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. I mean, if they're talking about the Bible, I guess that's okay. Social media, but on the Bible app. Okay, great idea. Use the family setups that you guys have, whether you're iOS or Android. Both have great family share, family link on the phones. What about you guys? How you monitor content?
So most of the kids at this table are still real young.
Okay, yeah.
Parents are just really, involved in it or controlling it, or the one who has older kids, very much discussion oriented as far as what they're watching,
Yeah.
aware of it, involved with it, and then takeaways, positives, negatives, etc.
Yeah, having conversations with the older kids, and they understand a lot. So having those conversations, or you're the one that presses play on Doc McStuffins. It used to be Doc McStuffins when Ellie was really little. Yeah, exactly. So you can just push the one that you want to watch. There's some that you don't want to watch. Okay, what about you guys? How do you manage content? Any ideas? You can take a hard pass if you want.
Ditto.
Okay, ditto. Okay. Oh, great.
I don't have it. My kids are still very little, but one of my best friends has, I don't know if it's an app, I just asked her, or technology. So when her kid gets a text message from a new number, it goes to her phone first.
Oh, okay.
She has to approve it.
Okay. That might be a Gab phone. Sometimes they have it set up where, you screen all the things that come across. I don't know if you can do that with any phone.
Yeah, I was going to put you around the table to say that, because we did that with one of our kids.
Okay.
Actually through whoever your phone provider
Oh, okay.
We had Verizon, and she had her own number, but all her text and what was being texted to her, because there was a sexting issue, not her, but what was being sent to her. Everything went through my phone.
Okay. That's overwhelming because just as I was on my daughter's phone the other night to edit some things and some permissions, she was getting constant, she's in middle school, and she just got a phone number this Christmas, and she was getting constant texts. I was like, this is overwhelming. Please stop. Oh, no group chats allowed. No group chats, wow. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah. Okay, no group chats. That's a good takeaway too. Anybody from your table want to share a takeaway? How do you manage content? Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah, what's the name of the streaming? Yippee. Okay, that's right. Yippee, and then there's a couple others, I think, streaming services that are exclusively Christian, and they have content on there for kids. Yeah, that's a great idea. Okay, what about you guys?
We kind of said something similar, but just even if it's a cartoon or the little ones, just making sure you're listening to the message and like if it's in the movie or like how they treat each other in the show.
Yeah.
That's something you want them to see.
Yeah.
And then with older kids, just making sure you have seen what they're watching first, like if it's a movie or.
Yeah, so screening it beforehand. We're not checking out completely when they're watching their show. Yeah, yeah. Okay, what about you guys?
We just said like how to just more educational stuff and be present when
Yeah,
they're watching, because even if they're watching something and it's like the show might seem good but has a different agenda, and so just ears are
Yeah.
listening, and so
yeah,
yeah, and then just knowing what you guys, these kids are so smart.
yeah,
I spent like 2 decades in youth ministry, and Kelly even said she has a friend who their child hid Snapchat in a different folder, and like if I could share stories, you guys would never have like it's insane. And
Yeah.
so if you don't think your kid has Snapchat, they probably do. And so I really strongly encourage things like TrueMe, Pinwheel, Bark phones, like those are just really great wireless devices that. Anyways, you can talk to me later if you want to know more
Yeah.
horror stories. But
good call, good call.
So,
Yeah,
hang on just one sec, sorry.
Yeah.
Well, that was so good. There's people at my table, and myself included, who have really young kids and don't know what any of those things you just said at the end like.
are they content filtering?
They're phone companies, and so, but they have pre-approved educational apps. So like you can't just download Instagram or Snapchat, and you have to pre-approve any phone number. Like I think you were saying that, Courtney.
But I'm just saying that the thing that you said at the end, like I really encourage you to have, and you whipped out. Like,
Oh,
you're
sorry.
doing it. So is there a way to make that public?
Oh, I don't know. Yeah, you can come find me.
Follow
afterwards.
Nicole on
But
Facebook.
Yeah, so TrueMe is a phone you can have. Gab is a phone.
Gab, Pinwheel, and then like Bark phones. Like those are all really great. If you don't want to I know there's like other people that are okay with iPhones. I personally, my kids will never have a phone until they're 16 or 17, and I will die on that, and you can, like, oh, well, all my friends have phones. Well, at least Urbsos, or she does not have a phone, and so that's fine. Yeah, it's just crazy, and the amount of depression and anxiety that I talk every week to my 8th grade girls is insane. I never used to have these conversations 10 years ago with girls.
Yeah.
They're 13 years old. I mean, I could cry. I literally have a girl right now in my group here at church, and she's just so depressed, and it's like, it's literally from a phone. Social media. So anyways,
Yeah.
I'm done
Okay,
with TED
good
Talk.
call. I'm going to talk about social media next, like blurb. Okay, you guys.
We kind of hit on a lot of that stuff. We have mostly elementary school, like the oldest. So
Okay.
very limited on. It's mostly was TV for us.
Yeah.
There's no iPads or phones yet because they're too young.
Yeah.
So the content's not there because we don't have it. For
Louder,
them.
please.
Oh, sorry. Our elementary school kids don't have like their own tablets and that sort of stuff. But we were talking about being aware of like even if you are watching the train show because they got model trains that
Yeah. Good call. We have to pay attention to the things our kids are taking in, and that takes energy and effort from us. So we have to be intentional and involved, and that's really hard for me. I'd like to just turn off and let them watch their thing, but...
I would say at my house, like we've already had, my oldest is 3rd grade, and we've already talked about how different families watch different stuff, and this is what it is for our family, and we're not going to change it for you.
Yep, yeah. And I feel like my kids have gotten used to that idea. It's like, well, that's just how our family does it. Yeah.
I'm not saying someone else is wrong, but this is
Yeah, that's just what we're doing. Yeah. Melinda?
As a grandparent, I have a 4-year-old granddaughter that before taking her to like any of the Disney movies or anything like that, I go and plugged in.
Plugged in, yeah.
And I can tell you everything about that movie.
Yeah.
The spiritual content, any sex, drugs, plugged in.
Yeah, so a great place to go before you watch something online is Plugged In. And I think it's just pluggedin.com. There's also Screen It that you can watch. You can read a couple things before you have to pay for Screen It. But I think Plugged In, something like that. Websites that tell you more about what the movie is about, what the show is about, and things to look out for. Even the old movies that we want to show our kids, we go on there to check in, because sometimes we grew up with the TV version, and it's different than the live version. Or not the live, but the whole version. Yeah, one more comment.
I was just gonna say, I know it's a big responsibility on the parents to protect the content, but something we've been trying to do is that we can't control everything our kids are gonna see. So when they see something that
Yeah.
they know is kind of quickly a red flag, to protect, our phrase we say is protect your heart and mind. And so if you quickly see something, you are responsible also for making that choice to look away, walk away,
Yeah,
turn it off.
absolutely.
As quickly as you can be. So football games, football season, the commercial comes on, and they'll either tell each other or we'll tell them eyes, and they both know, like, quickly eyes away or ears, and we try to pause it as quickly as we can or get off of that.
Yeah. So training our kids to identify when they've seen something that they don't need to see, it's really, really important. I mean, we've had conversations with our kids when they were really young about if they ever are with a friend, like my kids ride the bus, it's like a 5-minute bus ride, but they're sitting with friends that have phones already in elementary school. And so training our kids, not wanting them to be fearful, but just saying, if you see something on a friend's phone that makes you feel funny inside, like, let's talk about it. When they were really little, like kindergarten, and then as they got older, it's like, if you see a naked picture on someone's phone and it makes you feel icky, like, let's talk about it. You're not going to be in trouble, but let's have this conversation. And training them to think for themselves, it's so important, because also watching movies with our kids as they get older, a lot of times we'll just stop the movie. They hate this. We'll stop the movie and we'll talk to them about what we're watching and what is being communicated, so that we are training them to be thinking about the messages that are being talked to us, and how as Christians we can either resonate with that message, or we can say, that seems a little off. That, we should talk about that more, and things like that. So it's great when they put up a little fight about pushing pause on the movie, but it's really important. We personally are trying out Bark with our daughter and her device. That's kind of a newer thing. But there's also Canopy. Those are apps that you don't have to have a Bark phone. You don't have to have a Canopy phone. They're just apps you can put onto your phone. But then there's also, like we said, Gab and TrueMe. Just get a light phone. My sister-in-law has a light phone, and you can go online and look at it. It's super simple. And there's not even a camera. That was the hard thing for me. There's no camera, but it could be something that you do with your kid first. I real briefly just want to touch on social media. I could find no evidence of social media being beneficial whatsoever. So I'm sure that this issue will be a bigger issue for me personally as my kids get older, and I'm sure that you guys that have teenagers have kind of dealt with that in various ways. One of the things that Sissy Goff has suggested when I've heard her talk about this is to be the next to last. She actually pointed out, and I don't know, you can take this or leave it, she pointed out that if you're the very, very last, that your kid will figure out a way to get around you being the very very, very last. But if you're the next to last person to let your kid be on social media or to get a phone, those kinds of things, that is a rule of thumb that she suggests. Another rule of thumb, something that I found to be really helpful, is a cell phone agreement. So I know a lot of you, this is like way in the future. But for anyone who is thinking about giving their child a phone soon, a cell phone agreement where they read through, it has things like, this is like, hey, we believe in you, we empower you, we're giving you a phone, but here are all the stipulations. And then there are things like, I'm not going to take naked pictures. I'm not going to text and bully my friends. I know that my parents always have access to my phone and my passwords. As they get older, maybe that will change, but when they're younger, that parents have access to their phone and can look at it at any time. And then I also put in ours, boundaries with like putting your phone to bed, teaching them how to be good stewards of what their responsibility is, and having those kind of things outlined so that when we send them out to the world, they will have a good relationship with technology. They'll know how to manage it. We have time for really, really quickly. I feel like I've been harping on technology so much, but I do want to end with just real briefly talking around your tables. What ways have you found technology and different apps to be helping your family gathering? Are there apps that has actually helped your family have good family time and promoting kind of a positive family interaction? Are there specific apps? Are there activities that you have found helpful around technology? So discuss that in your tables real quick, and then we'll close us out. We need to wrap up a little bit. So is there anybody who has an idea they want to share, something that has helped enhance their family bonding? Anybody from your table? Photo albums, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. My kids love it when their pictures are on the screen, and yeah, especially when it's a crying picture. They make fun of each other. What about you guys? Anything that's enhanced family bonding time?
We do a Friday night movie night.
Okay, Friday night movie night.
Screen time. So I think I got that from TechWise Family. So the whole week, if they ask for screen time, it's like, is it Friday night? And we like pop popcorn, and me and my husband actually sit down and pay attention. So we're all
watching a movie together. Yeah.
It's really sweet.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's a great idea. What about you guys back there?
Yeah, like my parents don't live here, so FaceTime.
FaceTime with grandparents. Yep. Yeah, that's a great idea.
Then we still don't let them hold the phone.
Yeah. Yeah. What about you guys? No? Anybody else? Any else? Google Calendar. I mean, where would we be without Google Calendar? It's how my husband and I communicate. I just put it on the family calendar. Yeah. Okay, what about you guys?
We said a lot of these same things, and then we talked about like the music apps and getting like the whole family involved in like dance parties.
Yeah, dance parties for sure with music. Yeah, you guys?
Worship videos that kids love to watch was a big one.
Yeah.
Rachel mentioned Minnow, which is like a streaming.
Yeah, another one, Minnow. Yeah.
But it has Christian mostly.
Uh-huh. Yep.
And then Rachel had
I found a resource called The Birds and the Bees, and it's like,
Birds and the Bees.
yeah, and it's about how to teach your kids about sex without being like, you're 13, let's talk about it.
Okay, yeah.
Go away for a weekend. But it has resources for like how to talk about pornography and how to engage them about like good pictures, bad pictures, or like, no, we don't go to our friend's house and watch his older brother have sex with his girlfriend. Like, let's not do that.
Yeah.
That's not a thing, you know? So teaching your kids kind of like what's good, what's bad. It's like an e-course. It's like $75 to $100, 1 hour, and I feel so much more empowered.
Yeah.
To have conversations.
How to have conversations.
And
Yeah.
technology and technology.
Yeah, that's great. Birds and the Bees, conversations with our kiddos, starting when they're young, and what is appropriate, age-appropriate conversations. Yeah. Yeah, okay, you guys, it's been so good. Rayanne's going to come up and close us with a closing word. But I just want to encourage you that it's never too late to reestablish boundaries, right? We can we can have guidelines that change and ebb and flow as our families grow and as things change. Matt, could you put up the resources slide up there? The TechWise Family is the book that I read that I think is required reading. These two other books, the Opt-Out Family and the Becoming a Screen Savvy Family, those books are actually not out yet, so I have not read them. One is published by Zondervan, and I forget the other publisher, but I believe it was a Christian publisher. So those are two that I'm looking forward to reading. In terms of, I just put Bark and Canopy up there just as a resource for you if you're looking for content monitoring systems that's not a different kind of phone, like a Gab phone. The podcast Raising Boys and Girls is not technology specific, but it talks a lot about a lot of these issues. So we always recommend, that's Sissy Goff and David Thomas's podcast. Fightforloveministries.org I mentioned too, if you want to go on there and explore resources for you or for a friend that is struggling with pornography. Jenny Wise Black is another person. I mentioned her earlier. She's a marriage and family therapist that deals specifically with social media. So those are some of the technology things that I mentioned. This book, My TechWise Life, is written by Andy Crouch's daughter, Amy, and it's her. So she grew up with him as her dad, and then she co-wrote a book, talking about what it was like to live with these kinds of rules that he talks about, or guidelines. So maybe if you have older kids that you're getting lots of feedback from, then you could read that book with them and say, look at how she turned out. She loves it. If you want an example, of a cell phone contract, I made copies just for resource if you need that. So Ran, would you come up and close this out? That's fine. No, it'd be good.
Okay, that was so good. So thank you, Carrie. I feel like screen time and technology is just a constant learning curve at our house. And this kind of ties into what I've been thinking about, just like New Year's resolutions. And a lot of people have been making New Year's resolutions or coming up with words for the year the last few weeks. And I love the new year. Like, I love all the deep cleaning and organizing and all the things that come with New Year. But I don't usually make New Year's resolutions because, by February or March, most people have like slipped up or fallen off the bandwagon completely. And I don't like to fail, so I just don't make a resolution. However, that has not kept me from failing at things that I want to do well in. And I just want to encourage all of us to not beat ourselves up if we do set goals and don't follow through on them. And if you're one of those people, I just don't beat yourself up over that. It is okay. So if you have a rule of no TV on school nights, or and it kind of slips into one or two, or your salad turns into a donut. I mean, that might have happened once. Or a conversation with your children ends up into yelling and stuff. It's okay. Just do the next right thing. And Micah 6:8 tells us that he has shown you, oh man, what is good and what does the Lord require of you, but to do justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. And so I would just encourage us to do that next right thing. So just say, man, that donut was amazing, and then eat salad for lunch or dinner, and or acknowledge your voice and apologize for it, and then just move on and do the next right thing. And so that's what I would want to encourage all of us as moms and friends, to encourage each other to do what's right, the next thing, and don't beat yourself up on your slip up, because your slip up does not, it's not your end story, and it doesn't have to define you. So anyway, let me just pray for us real quick, and then you guys can go get your kids. Lord, thank you so much for this morning. And I just want to thank you for all these moms here and for what Carrie shared. And we have a lot going on in our minds, and we all want to leave here and do better at something, Lord. And I just thank you for each of us being here together, and that we can encourage each other with what we heard. Lord, I know some of us are glad to kick 2023 into the rearview mirror, but then the 2024 has started out really tough for some people. And I'm just thankful that you see each of us where we are. And I just thank you for this crowd of women, that we can be here to support each other wherever we are, and be with them as they go get their kids and move on throughout the day, Lord, that they will be aware of you, and that we will serve you in all that we do and say. We love you, Lord, and thank you again for this morning. Amen.